Thanks. Well, welcome to Wichita, Robert.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get started, I would just love to hear your reactions to the dance performance that you saw. And just so everybody in the audience knows, Robert and I have a pact that we're not going to make each other cry tonight. So that is a rule.
So I actually watched it for the first time today. It was today, right? Today.
Today, yeah.
Yeah, today. And there's 3 different songs that play. The dance is absolutely beautiful, but going into the second song, as soon as the note started to play, I knew the song because it was the 3rd song that my wife and I danced to in our wedding 22 years ago. So I cried sitting in the gallery by myself, and I had to text my wife. I sent her the link because I was like, she's got to see this. And then she was like, it's beautiful. And I was like, well, I cried. And she was like, well, I cried too. So we were both crying, but it's absolutely amazing. I was surprised. I didn't really know what to expect, and I am so grateful to everybody that was involved in that. It was amazing.
Great. Well, we've got incredible talent here.
Yes.
So just knowing that your art is inspiring other artists.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get to it. So I kind of wanted to start at the origin story for the Wichita Art Museum. Tara and I went to New York in October to go acquire the Beast by Vanessa German at a gallery, and to also, I'm glad you love it, yes. So she certainly sparks conversation, and if you're confused, please watch the video because that kind of brings it all home. But we're going to go visit with Claire Oliver Gallery because we have an incredible exhibition by Barbara Earl Thomas coming up in the fall, and this gallery represents Barbara. And so we take the train to Harlem, and we walk into her gallery, and this is what we see, and we were like blown away, just absolutely blown away. And every single work in this show had sold, with the exception of Sunday Kind of Love, which was sort of tentative, and I fought for this because I felt like it just belonged at the Wichita Art Museum. And I just wanted to start here, Robert.
Okay.
Talk us through Sunday Kind of Love and what this painting means to you, how it came to be. And I believe, too, it was also one of your, at the time, largest works.
Yeah, it actually, I believe still to date, maybe it is my largest work that I've created.
Widest, yeah.
Yeah, the widest work that I've created. The inspiration actually came from when my wife and I, we were young, before we actually got married. We didn't have a lot of money, and it was before we had children, and so we both worked. She worked at a place called Gibson's, and then I worked as a contractor at another location. And when we would get off, what we would do is we'd clean the house, we'd straighten up, and then at the end we would just lay either on the couch or on the bed, and sometimes we wouldn't turn on the TV, turn on the radio, we would just listen to each other breathe. I still tell her to this day, like, her heartbeat's my favorite thing to listen to. And so it was just peaceful. And nothing mattered. The work week didn't matter. The money that we did or didn't have at the time didn't matter. Whatever was going outside of those 4 walls where we were at, nothing bothered us because we were at complete peace with one another. And so I wanted to create that feeling with this piece. And so I brought this couple into my home to photograph them. And I explained to them the story that I just told you. And we did a shoot. We shot for maybe like 3 or 4 minutes. And by the 3rd shot, I knew that I had what I needed because I got the feeling when I seen it. And so that's what you see in this particular painting, Sunday Kind of Love.
Beautiful. Well, I was in contact with Marina, and she sent me some photos.
Yeah.
So tell us about this photo.
This was our wedding, and our oldest son, Caleb. This was we were ripping and running. We were late to our own wedding. But we got there, and we made it happen. It's one of the best days of my life, I think. It's where I became a man. I knew that once I said I do, that my old ways had to be put behind me, and I had to, be somebody that my wife could feel comfortable and confident and safe with. And I wanted to be the man that, at this time, because we only had one kid, I wanted to be someone who he looked up to, and he wanted to kind of be like or be better than, at least. So yeah, this was a great day.
So talk a little bit then about the role fatherhood played not only in shaping you as a man, but as an artist.
It's amazing. So I love movies and watching TV and stuff like that, and so like for this particular piece, it kind of represents like what it meant to me to be a father, right? It's like, so in the movies and the films, you see a lot of absent fathers in the Black families, and that just wasn't my truth, and it wasn't something that I accept or something that I want to be responsible for not speaking against. And so you'll see the frown on the kid's face. My kids would do that often. Like, they don't like being corrected, but you correct them because you want to see them not make the same mistakes that you make. You want to see them succeed. And so whenever you see a do-rag in any of my paintings, it represents a crown. And so this father is putting the crown on his son. And his son doesn't get it. He'd rather be outside playing, or watching TV or YouTube or TikTok or whatever it is that the kids want to do these days. But the dad is, he's showing him, no, you've got to put this on, and you've got to carry yourself, with respect and dignity, and this is what we do. And you may not get it right now, you may not like it right now, but I promise you one day it's going to, come full circle, and you're going to appreciate the things that I'm doing. I mean, I'm looking at my kids. They come to me and they still like, well, Dad, I'm going to ask you because I know that you know the answer. And that feels good, because it used to be I would tell them the answer before they'd ask, and they wouldn't listen. It's like, come on, guys. So, yeah.
And now you have 3 kids.
We have 3 kids.
One is a senior in high school,
Yes, ma'am.
and then empty nesters next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tara had mentioned you are a self-taught artist,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
you do have, training in originally fashion.
Yeah, wow. Good job, babe.
So take us back to the origins of your days. I believe it was at Parsons.
It is Parsons.
And
Parsons, the new school.
yeah. So talk about that, because you were, for all intents and purposes, you basically are from Lawton, Oklahoma.
Yes, ma'am.
Had your kids in Lawton.
Yes.
But moved the whole family to New York, right?
Yes.
So walk us through that whole story.
So, in high school, I thought I wanted to be a fashion designer, and so we started backwards. We started the family, and then it was like, okay, I want to pursue a degree in fashion design, and so I ended up getting accepted to Parsons, the new school, with the goal of getting the degree as a male fashion designer. My goal was to work for like Ralph Lauren or something like that, and eventually go on to create my own line. This is funny looking at this, because prior to 2012, when I first started painting, this was how I drew people, because I didn't do faces.
Oh, we're gonna get there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I won't get ahead of myself. So I moved our family to New Jersey, and I would commute every day to Parsons, and things started off really great. And the recession hit, and the place where I had my student loan through, they filed bankruptcy, and so I lost the financing to go to school, so I had to drop out, which was a really rough time, but like I had a great family that supported me, and they were like, we're gonna figure this out. And so, long story short, we ended up moving back to Lawton, and I'd say 2 years after that is when I started, 3 years after that is when I started painting.
And when you moved back to Lawton, you worked at the Goodyear
Yes, ma'am.
tire plant, and felt like you made it.
I did. I felt like, because I was making, I think, like $22, $23 an hour, and I was like, I don't have a degree. I don't have any special training, and I'm making this amazing money. I have great benefits. My family is living well. We lived in a very nice neighborhood, and so for me, I had felt like I had made it, because prior to this, we were homeless. We were homeless for, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months. And to go from being homeless and having to live in someone else's house without having, a place for your kids to call their own. They didn't have a room. They didn't have toys. We were, eating off of dishes that didn't belong to us, and it was a really rough patch. And so when Goodyear came along, I was like, okay, if this is where you want me to be, God, I'm super happy. And so I thought that was my life for the next 20 or 30 years, and I was content doing that.
So then I believe this is one of the first images that you created.
Y'all really pulled out.
Before,
Yeah.
before you picked up a brush.
Right.
But after you dropped out of fashion school.
Yes.
Right? So
Yes.
you didn't really create anything.
No.
And then, so tell us what's going on here.
So my wife had this new app, and she was like, it's great because you can put these filters on your photos, and it's really amazing. And so we just thought that you could, change your photos, and it would be a photo album, because back then, whatever you took the picture on Instagram, of course, it saved to your phone, never knowing that it was an actual app. So everything that we took pictures of was on Instagram. And so I was like, okay, this is something different. This is like Twitter and Facebook and MySpace. And so I ended up...
MySpace.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
My age. And so I ended up going to this hip-hop artist. His name is Fabulous. And I said, I think I might have had like 9 or 10 followers. And I said, if you follow me, I will draw you. And so that next morning I woke up and I had like 15 or 20 more followers, which was amazing. It was a big deal to me.
Right.
And so I'm scrolling through, looking at all the followers, and he's one of the followers. And so I'm like, crap, okay, I've got to go ahead and draw this guy, because if I don't, he's going to unfollow me. I was young. It was a big deal to me then. And so I'm looking for markers. I'm looking for pens. I'm looking for pencils. There's absolutely nothing. You would think with school-age kids that you have that. But it seems like because you have school-age kids, you don't have any of those things. And so I ended up climbing up into the attic because I was completely done. The fact that we ended up becoming homeless kind of, it hurt me to the point where I wanted nothing to do with fashion. Because I felt like it let me down. Like it was supposed to be what catapulted us into a new lifestyle, but it didn't. It actually took us backwards and we lost everything. And so I climbed up into our attic to go through all of my fashion stuff, and I literally had 5, maybe 4 or 5 markers and like 1 pen. And so it just worked out that I had the right stuff to do. And so I sketched him, and this was like the first like piece of art that I did where there's a whole face, and I posted on Instagram, and that kind of at the time it went, I guess, viral for that. I mean, back then it was viral, so it was like maybe like 400 people had liked it and shared it. It was a big deal, but it was a start, and it's crazy to, see this and have it here. Like, you and Marina, y'all came together.
Yeah, well, your wife is amazing.
She is, thank you.
And we'll talk about this a little bit later too, but I mean, the role social media played in your, not just evolution, but in your promotion and your sales and being able to get collectors and things like that. I'm sure the audience is going to want to hear more about that.
Sure.
So you kind of continue down this path of fashion, right? Shoes, and there's a lot of sneakers as well, right?
Yes.
But then you start to see something kind of shift, right? And there's still that very, you can see that quality of a fashion illustrator, but now you're doing portraiture of recognizable folks, right? So we've got Warhol and Basquiat here.
Right.
So tell us what's going on now. Where are you moving in terms of your body of work?
I was doing a lot of the fashion illustration type deals, drawings, and I would often get asked if I would do painting, and I was always like, well, no, I don't want to do paint because it'll get messy, I'll get dirty. I don't want to do that, right? And so I had a guy say, okay, well, there's this guy, he said, well, since you won't paint, will you do a drawing for me? And I was like, sure. And he sent me this picture of him, and it had a blue filter on it, and I didn't have that many blues. And so what I did is I just put music on, and I grabbed every marker that I had, and that's how I formed this particular style, where you'll see it's all these different colors that create this image of the person. And so when I did that piece, it actually kind of excited me. Like I got really excited about it, and I remember, telling Marina, like, I think I got something, And so it was something that I worked with, and people really, really enjoyed it. And before like NFTs was a thing, like I was doing these back in 2000, like maybe 13 or 14. And what I would do is, like, you would sell the original, but I would scan it in, and then people were buying a digital copy for $45. And they were like, we could just keep it on our phone, we could keep it on our computer, or whatever. And so it just was something that I think learning the technique of doing that with those different colors is kind of what helped me to grow into doing what I do now with paint.
So speaking of paint and getting messy,
Yeah.
I think this is one of the first paintings you did for a show,
It
right?
is. It is.
In New York.
In New York. And
so Jay-Z.
Yes.
So talk about and it's really painterly, right? You're like,
Yeah,
I don't want to get
very
messy, and
so.
now you're like pouring the paint.
Yeah, by then it was just like, you know what, like this is fun, and I don't want to be restricted. And my wife was like, you know what, just clean up your mess. So, by the time I ended up getting this was like 8 months after I had picked up the paintbrush for the first time. I started doing these type of works. You still see this is like the early stages of me trying to find my palette as far as like for the flesh tones. And it's funny to see this because like a lot of that is stuff that I no longer do. But this painting is actually hung up in my studio right now, and I haven't sold it because I do love it, and I know that that's like the foundation of my career, like where I started, So I don't look down on it. I actually am amazed and grateful for it. But there's a lot of dripping and just turning on loud music. I tried a lot during creating these earlier works to relive that moment of turning the loud music on with the markers and just going to work until something became of the canvas. And so that's why you see, especially like the background, it was just so free and loose, and just I had fun with it.
And so tell these folks, 8 months after you pick up a paintbrush for the first time, how do you land a show in New York?
Social media.
Okay, let's talk more about that.
So, of course, because Fabulous had shared my work, then other people eventually started, and then he would share something else. Because we were all new to Instagram. And so there was this guy in New York who started following me on Facebook, and he was like, I love your work. I would love to do a show. And I said, okay. And I think this was like, I don't know, maybe September, somewhere in there of 2012. And so I said, okay, well, when would you like to do it? And he was like, March 2013. That's like no time. So my studio at the time was my master bath in our bedroom. So my wife was constantly telling me, just clean up after yourself, just clean up after yourself. And she would have to walk in because I paint at all hours. There's times where I'd get up at, 4 or 5 in the morning and paint until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And so she would have to walk behind the easel. And then if I did something smaller, I'd have larger paintings in the bathroom drying on an easel, and then I'd do smaller paintings, and they'd be drying at the kitchen table. I had a garage, but for some reason it didn't click to move to the garage. And she probably was okay with that because then you'd have 3 rooms with paint,
right.
But yeah, that's how that went, and he said, so we'd like to do the show. So that show opened, and then I brought 34 pieces. And then in the first 4 hours, 31 sold.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I think, was this in that show too?
No, this was not.
Okay, this was in a later show. So
this was a later show.
But not much later.
Actually,
right?
this particular one never made it to a show. This one was picked up by Diddy.
Yep.
Yeah.
How'd you do that? So how'd you sell this to Sean Combs?
So he was doing his 20-year anniversary tour. And his manager, which is James Cruz, follows my work and is a collector of my work, and said, Sean Combs, he's a huge fan of Muhammad Ali. He actually has a tattoo of Muhammad Ali's signature on his chest. And he was like, that's what we want for his 20-year anniversary gift, to celebrate 20 years of Bad Boy Records, 20 years of being an entrepreneur and a successful, businessman. And so rather than get cars, jewelry, houses, trips, and stuff, this was the gift that he wanted for his 20-year anniversary.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you have quite a roster of collectors, from sports figures to singers to just independent folks.
Yes, ma'am.
You have to stop calling me ma'am.
So,
So tell me about this, because you dabbled in abstraction.
I still love abstract work. So early on, like I said, with the backgrounds, it was loose and free.
Yep.
And it was like an escape, because you didn't have to control it so much, because people don't really expect something. Like, you didn't want to do a painting of, say, Denzel Washington, and then it turn out like Morgan Freeman, right?
Right.
And so you have to really pay attention to the details to make it work. Whereas with abstract, you can just let the canvas and the paints have this beautiful conversation. And so, I've done a few. I actually only have one left. I think maybe I may have done like 15 abstract works total in my career. And actually, no, I have two, because she kept one, and it's over our fireplace. And then this piece on the left, which is Winter Cherry Blossom, I have that piece still, and everything else has been added to some pretty amazing collections.
But something that I noticed, this is when it seems like you also discovered clear coat.
Yes.
Which is so...
It's fun.
Right, and so clear coat is something you do now with the majority of your work.
So no, this is an epoxy resin.
Okay.
So it's a hard, it hardens, and it has a very high shine to it. Like, you can see a reflection in it. And, but I do use varnish now, which you can use like a shinier type of varnish, or a satin, or a flat. And I use a mixture of like a shine, I can't remember the exact name, I think gloss and satin. I mix them together because I don't want it too shiny, like I don't want it to look like
this, like glass.
Yeah, and so, but of course I use those to protect, the paintings.
Okay, so I just wanted to make an observation between where I see this like distinct shift in your work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So Most Kings, 2015, this is another Basquiat portrait.
Yes.
And the brushwork's tighter.
Right.
The background's super reduced, staring right at you. Mm-hmm. But it's a recognizable figure universally, right? But then we get to this.
This was a shift.
Huge shift.
Yeah, this was a big shift.
So no longer somebody that's universally recognizable,
right? But
somebody who's distinct, like very important to you.
Yes.
So talk to us about Untitled Brick Phone.
So around this point is where I decided, like, I didn't want to work off stock images, because I didn't want to be considered an Instagram or social media artist. I wanted to be taken more serious. And so this particular piece, for me, when I was growing up, my sister had a brick phone. It's a Motorola phone. I don't know what they're really called. Their real name is. Mm-hmm. We called it a brick phone. And so this kind of represented like my sister and her group of friends. They wore the big earrings. They loved to wear their hair in the summertime, especially. They'd wear the large braids, and they would just, even if they didn't have minutes, because this was back when you needed to buy minutes on your phone. So they could not have minutes, but if you had the phone, you looked important, and so they would walk around acting like they're talking to somebody, but we live in the same house, so I know you don't have minutes on your phone, so you're not talking. And so, that was something, just from watching them. She was my older sister, so she was cool to me. She is cool to me. She still is cool to me. And watching her and her friends just do their thing, and it was a super fun piece. This particular model, she's out of Florida, and I was just, it was a shift in my work that I'm super happy that I made. So
it starts to, and the way you work today, like this individual represents your sister, but it's not a direct portrait of your sister.
Not at all.
It's a model representing this memory of who she embodies.
Right.
And I love the missing nail.
Yeah. I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say. I just wanted to see if anybody would see it. Yeah.
So Your work shortly after that
Yeah.
also became more political.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite pieces. I actually created this during quarantine. With everything that was going on in the world, I just felt like, it's time for us to come together and slay this. Everybody's heard of the David and Goliath story in the Bible, and so this right here was a piece that the kid actually, his family lived across the street from us, and so of course we see them because they're playing outside, and to be honest, like we never really seen a lot of them before quarantine, but it was funny, like during quarantine, you get to see all of your neighbors because nobody's leaving the block. Everybody would come outside, we'd sit in our driveways, you'd wave at each other. And so I went to their house, I explained who I was. My garage is my studio, and it was in this particular house where we lived. And so I was like, yeah, and I'm an artist, and I was going to show them my work, and they were like, no, we watch you through your garage, so we know who you are. And so I explained to them my idea of this little kid pulling back the slingshot, and for me it represented him standing up against all of everything that was going on negative in the world, and he's fighting it, but he represents everybody who wants to come against everything that was going on during those times that was negative. So yeah, this is actually one of my personal favorite pieces, just because of where I was at mentally. There was a lot of pain, there was a lot of confusion, uncertainty. You didn't know what was going on because COVID just hit, and when you watched the news, I remember seeing like people just passed out on the floor. And so it was like, God, what if it created this nervous energy to me. And so I was painting as if my life depended on it. Like I wanted to make sure that I got these works around this time out, just in case, because the way the media was portraying this COVID, it did have me, because I wasn't educated enough, it had me feeling like, okay, I could die at any minute. And so I'm going to paint as much as possible. If I wasn't in the house with my family eating banana bread and peach cobbler, I was out in the garage painting something. So, yeah, I love this piece.
And it was also shortly after this time that it seems like you really start to focus too on black male,
Yes.
masculine, like just the black masculine figure,
Yes.
but also vulnerability.
Yeah, I think it's important because amongst ourselves, you have like this unspoken way of living. Like you have to be hard. Like you can't cry. You can't be overly in love with one woman. You know what I'm saying? Like in certain neighborhoods, in certain circles, these are the way people think. And that is a reality for a lot. But for me and for my circle and the men that are in my life, that's not who we are. And so you see. For me, we love our kids. We love our wives. We love being providers. We love, being an asset to our community as much as possible. And so once I began to, I'd say somewhere around maybe the brick phone is when I started getting a decent amount of attention. And then, of course, once quarantine hit, I think there was a shift in the attention black art was getting. And so I was like, okay, this is my foot into the door. Now I'm going to show people what my truth is. And so you see a lot of that in the work, and I haven't looked back. I've just been my focus of just, painting these stories and these beautiful figures for people to see and experience.
They're incredibly beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm going to shift gears a little
Okay.
and talk about success and failure. So in 2017, you won the Spectrum Spotlight Artist Award for, the description was your color-saturated, spontaneous realism celebrity portraits.
Yes.
So the earlier work.
It was.
And you see Michelle and Barack.
Yes.
This was a huge painting.
It's
behind
very
you
big.
that you did.
Yeah.
And so happy. And then this is one of many. I love how they put an exclamation point in this. Thanks for your submission. Not what we're looking for at this time. Best of luck to you as you seek representation.
I got a lot of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So something that I think I've also just seen in your work and when you speak is your faith, right?
Yeah, it gets
so
me through.
Your spirituality, your faith, you reference God a lot. So talk about that in terms of navigating success and failure, not failure, success and rejection, ups and
Yeah,
downs, right?
that makes sense. I like that.
But also just how that is in your work and manifests in your work and who you are.
Well, I mean, before we speak, because we can speak about both of these, but I think that it's very important to understand your purpose and then to set out on purpose to walk in your purpose. And when you do that, nothing can get to you. The praise doesn't get to you, and then the reject doesn't get to you. I mean, of course, we're human, and so yes, you do get excited when somebody is happy with your work, right? And you may get a little sad for a moment, but for me, it's like, okay, well, I know that it's bigger than just this moment. So I've got to push through. And so that keeps me going. For these two particular pieces, well, the one on the left, God, It's Me Again, I think that was the last piece that I created of 2022. I've had an amazing 2-year run. Everything that I've created has sold. Every show that I've been in, whether it's group show, solo show, or whatever, has sold out in less than 36 hours, every show. And so I did a show in London in October, and nothing sold. And so it was like a reality check, and which is fine, and I embrace it and appreciate it now, because it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, you have to look at the big picture. It's great to have these highs, but it's okay to have these low moments, right? Because out of those low moments, great things can happen. And so I did spend a lot of time in prayer in the following weeks from the London show. And it was just like, okay, God, you got to show me what I'm supposed to do. And so I ended up creating, I think, like 3 paintings before the end of the year. And this one just represents me, like, constantly pulling on God to find direction, to make sure that I don't step out of purpose. Because when you find success, or what you view as success, it's easy to lose track of who you are, right? And so I just want to make sure that I never forget, who I am. Not as just an artist, but as a son, as a brother, as a father, as a husband, and as a human being. So that's where that was. And then the one on the right was, it was a piece where I just wanted, I wanted black people, especially the black men, and so I put like this crown of these beautiful flowers on his head, to be seen as equal. And so I felt like the way that God sees us, he sees us as his children. It's not like, oh, well, you're Robert, and you're Michael, and you're Sam, and you're tall, and you're short, and you're big, and you're small. It's like, you're my children. I love you all equally, right? And so that's where this one came. It's this beautiful man who's praying and saying, God, just let them see me how you see us, how you see all of us.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So here's your studio.
Yeah.
And your studio makes Tara look tall.
It does.
Right? So
He's not that tall in real life.
Right. But despite that, I mean, you are able to really, get to some scale here,
Yeah,
right?
I do.
Even though you're limited to your garage. So let's talk a little bit about process, because it is a fascinating process.
Yeah.
So here's 2 works that are in process. Walk us through conception to completion.
Okay. So, we'll start just with the actual paintings that we want. Or do you want to talk about photographs?
I want to talk about the photographs, yeah.
Okay, so
And your phone.
yeah, I do a lot of. I've transitioned to using a camera, but I would do a lot of photos using my iPhone. And so I'll get an idea, just like, say, the kid that lived across the street. I shot the images for that on my iPhone. I'll have this idea, and then usually, if if I get the idea, I'll have an idea of what I want the person to look like. And so usually I'll go on social media and I'll find somebody who looks like that and I'll reach out to them and we set something up. Or I'll reach out to a photographer and tell them, okay, I want to, hire you to do this photo shoot. This is what I have in mind for the person. Long hair, short hair, dreadlocks, no hair, bald, whatever. And they usually will send me images of models or whatever. And then it could be something as simple like I was telling you. My wife and I were in LA. I took her to a donut place, and there was a guy who leaned out the window to hand us our donuts. And I was like, man, he'd be great for a painting. And so I asked him. I was like, can I paint you? It's kind of awkward, but it works. When I show them, some of my work, they're like, okay. And it works out. But, and then once I get that, what I like...
You made him take his shirt off.
I made him take his shirt off in the parking lot. It's gonna be a beautiful painting. It's gonna be amazing. But, once I get the images, I usually will go through, and that's usually at night, like when, sometimes when she's asleep, and sometimes she's awake, and I'll ask her opinion about things, but I go through, and I find an image that I think... from the photo shoot that's going to paint really well. It has to speak to me. There's just something about it that says I'm the right one. It could be something as simple as just moving, the person's fingers to the left or to the right, and it makes it what you all see in these. And so then I take the image and I turn it black and white. As you mentioned, I'm self-taught, and so I never was trained to know how to make the flesh tones the way they are. What I did when I did my first paintings, what I did was I just bought a box of acrylic paint, and I poured everything onto like a paper plate or something. I don't remember. It wasn't a palette though. And then I would just dip my brush and just go. It was very spontaneous, and then it just, eventually you paint enough. It's very thick and full of texture, but it's a person, even though it's filled with like non-flesh. Like there was no shades of brown or peach or whatever. It was, blues and reds and oranges and stuff like that. And so the black and white allows me still to paint using the palette that I've formed with non-flesh tone colors. And everything is done off of my phone. You have some artists like Kehinde Wiley. I've watched him paint where he takes and he prints them off in section by section, and then he'll tape them and then paint that section and then pull it down and then get another piece and tape it and then paint that. Me, everything I do is off my phone, and I just zoom in, and then I paint really, really close to the canvas. And I take a lot of breaks to go back and see, because you can't see the whole picture being so close. I'm usually within, 6 to 8 inches from my canvas is how I work, so I can be able to get the detail in there. And then I'll step back 4 or 5 feet, look at it, and say, okay, this needs to change. And until that one little section that I'm focused on looks right, then I'll work myself around until the piece itself is done. And so it starts with the background, and then usually I'll go to the flesh for the people, and then from there I go to hair and to their garments.
It's amazing, and here they are done.
Yeah.
Right, and it's to me so amazing how complete you get each section, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
instead of working kind of a process across the canvas, yeah. So I want to end our conversation with, you kind of come full circle back to celebrity. Right?
Yeah, that is true.
And if anybody wants to own a Robert Peterson, you can get one for what's the cost? 55 cents?
I think it's like 60. I buy them by the sheet. They're $12 a sheet.
Okay.
I buy them because I'm so proud of it. So I buy them by the sheet. Yeah. And I give them away.
So you too can own a Robert Peterson. Yeah. But so tell us how this came to be.
This was an amazing experience that I'm super proud of, and I'm grateful because my kids' kids will be able to see this and be proud of this as well. In 2022, early 2022, I believe it was, I was approached by a gentleman named Michael, and he said that he had been referred out to me. Somebody had mentioned my name to him about doing a painting for a stamp, and he represented the United States Postal Service. And so at first I was paranoid, so I thought it was like a gimmick. I thought it was a scam. He was going to ask me for some money or something. So I didn't respond right away. And so what I did was I did take his name and then the people that were CC'd into the email, and I started looking them up, and then I seen that they were actually a part of the United States Postal Service. So then I emailed them. Like, my wife was getting ready for work, and she's usually like, get off your phone, you're always on the, stuff like that. And so but like, it hit me. So she's getting dressed, and it hit me that he is who he says he is. So I don't remember what her conversation was, but I do remember texting him and saying, okay, I'm interested in hearing more. And he said, there was a committee who voted, they love my work, and they're hoping that I would agree to do this commission of Ernest Gaines, and for it to be turned into a stamp at some time. And so at the time, I didn't know who Ernest Gaines was. And so I said, I feel like, I'm open to doing this, but let me see who he is. And so what really kind of made me agree to do it was the fact that this man loves his family, loved his wife, loved his kids, and they love and respect him still to this day, as if he were still alive. And that's what I want. I want that from my family, after I'm long and gone. And so I agreed to do the stamp. So we worked out the contract and the money and everything, and I ended up being told by somebody else other than Mike that was CC'd in that I had to do several different sketches and paintings. And I don't do pre-sketch. Like, say if I were to take on a commission, there's no pre-sketch. It's one and done. Mm-hmm. It's just, that's how my practice works. And so I was like, okay, well, I can do multiple paintings. And so they said, okay, when you get done with them, as you get done with them, send them to us, we'll vote, and if we like something about it, we'll tell you. That way you can add it to the next one. And so I did the very first painting, which is what you see here. And they were like, we love it. We just want to change the background. Because the original painting, he has a blue background. And so they were like, well, would you be offended if we changed the background? And I was like, no, I can change the background for you. So I ended up sending them like 6 different backgrounds where I had photoshopped. And then they sent this particular shade back. And it was a mock-up of the actual stamp, which is what this is. And it was amazing. Like, it was such a cool feeling, but it didn't feel real, to be honest. Like, it didn't. It was like one of those things where I was like, okay, like, I got paid, I signed contracts.
That was real.
I sent the painting to them, but it still didn't feel real. And so the morning of January 23rd of this year, well, it actually, they did a news release sometime early January, and I was like, okay, babe, this is cool, look at this. But until I held the stamp, it didn't feel real. So the morning of January 23rd, my wife and I, we woke up early, and I was like, look, we've got to be the first person to see this stamp. And so when I walked in to the post office, and I seen it up there, up top above the counter. And then I seen it when I walked up to it, and I asked the lady, I was like, can I get some of your Black Heritage stamps of Ernest Gaines? And she was like, oh, we don't have those. I was like, oh my God, it's not real. Because they told me, they were like, this is nationwide. Every post office will have this. And so I was like, no, they lied. And so she was like, then a guy came behind. He was like, oh, no, we got those. They're in the back. They come out today. We just have to open it. And so she went back there, and I was like, all right, I don't know, I bought like 12 pages or something like that. And then walked out, and then like I ended up going to the post office like 3 or 4 days later, and they were like, we're sold out. And they were like, and then so I went to the next post office, and they were like, are you Robert? And I was like, yeah. They were like, your people are asking for your stamps, and we're going to tell them that you're not on the stamp. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not on the stamp, but I painted the stamp. So, it's really cool to be able to know that people everywhere are now, they have the ability to be able to see and purchase the work.
Yeah.
Because, typically when you think of an artist's work, it's in a private collection or a museum or a gallery, and not everybody has access to those things. But somehow, some way, we all have the opportunity to see a piece of mail. And so to see those pop up on, social media, people, of course, are tagging me that I know. And then, like, I went into the UPS store, and they were like, we got our bill in today, and it had this Ernest Gaines, and, it was just amazing to see.
So it's like snail mail viral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
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 Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, but I want to open it up to anybody in the audience who has, I think we have time for like 1 or 2 questions.
Sure.
So. Okay, Joey,
Yeah. I used to watch this show called Project Runway, and they filmed at Parsons, and so I actually applied like 3 or 4 times and got turned away. I think they got tired of seeing me apply, and so they were like, "Screw it, we're gonna accept him in and see what he does." Yeah.
Did you? Oh, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
You were describing your first show, and I heard you say you got up and were painting almost all day.
Yes.
Quit work?
Yes. So I got injured. What caused me this? I think you said at the beginning. I ended up getting injured, and so I was on light duty, and I was actually at home a lot because I had injured my hip and I had to have surgery. So preparing for I had surgery of September 2013. So I was already at the house, and so it allowed me to do that. And because the shift work that I was doing 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., my sleep schedule was already messed up. So it was nothing for me to be up at, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning painting.
And just to give a sense of how long did Sunday Kind of Love take?
Not long. I'd say maybe 10 days.
10 days.
Maybe. I was working on Sunday Kind of Love and one other painting at the same time. Yeah.
Can I think of one last quick? Yeah. Yes.
Help us understand who Ernest Gaines is.
Ernest Gaines is an author. He's wrote several books that have been turned into film. One of them, you put me on the spot, I can't think of what it is, but there was a movie that he did that Cicely Tyson was in. He wrote fiction books that were fictional, but some parts of them were non-fictional, like based loosely upon real life events.
And rooted in the Black, like he didn't see
Exactly.
the same thing. He didn't see like his story reflected in books.
Exactly.
And
so that's the reason why that I paint the way I paint and push to get it out there is the same reason why he wrote the way he wrote and pushed to get it out there, because he wanted to see these stories out in the world, out in the universe. He wanted people to be able to get a hold of his books and read them and see a different side of the Black community, Black lives. Yeah, that's a great question.
Well, Robert, thank you. And I want to let all the folks know here, we've spent the day together plotting and planning what will be a solo exhibition of yours,
Yes.
opening at the Wichita Art Museum in fall of 2024.
Thank you.
Yes. With hopes to travel it to several venues with a full published catalog. And we're just so delighted that you're part of our family and can't wait to see more of you here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you.
Great.